Matthew chapter 28. Early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone, and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. Then the angel spoke to the women. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He has risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come, see where his body was lying. And now go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Remember what I have told you." The women ran quickly from the tomb. They were very frightened, but also filled with great joy. And they rushed to give the disciples the angel's message. And as they went, Jesus met them and greeted them. And they ran to him, grasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there." God's word for us on this day. When I was growing up, my brother and I, on Easter morning, we would race all around the house, looking for our Easter basket, which for some reason was hidden. I don't know why our Easter baskets were hidden, but they were. And so we had this race, to find out who was going to find theirs first. And whoever's found theirs first got to eat their candy first, I guess. But we would get our basket, and then we had to sort through all that stupid Easter grass, that plastic Easter grass. You know what I'm talking about? You guys know that? It's like a vacuum cleaner's worst nightmare, that plastic Easter grass stuff. But we would have to dig through that to get to our jelly beans and the chocolate candy that was buried in there. And that was kind of our Easter morning tradition. Do you guys have those Easter traditions like that, where you're with Easter baskets and stuff like that? You guys have those? I loved Easter, when I was growing up. Easter was all about excitement, and it was about fun, and it was about food. Food, right? Oh my gosh. Easter food like turkey and ham and green bean casserole and mashed potatoes and rolls and 35 different kinds of pie. You guys have Easter feasts like that? Easter was one of those days where I had to find creative ways of fitting more food in me. One trick is, you eat really fast before your stomach realizes that you're full, right? Or in between courses, you jump up and down to pack the food down so you can fit more in there. None of that works, of course. In fact, most of the time that actually led to me throwing up, but the memories. Church was part of our Easter traditions too. As I was growing up, church was part of our Easter tradition. But I'm embarrassed to say this, but I remember it was more of a formality. I went to church so I could get the food and the candy. I know that. I remember that. But I went, and at some point, I don't remember when it was, but at some point, something clicked along the way. Something clicked, and it made me realize that Easter is actually about more than my stomach. I don't know when it was that clicked, and I'm not sure exactly what it was that made it click, but at some point it clicked, and I thank God that it did. I thank God that it clicked. Because the truth is that Easter is a powerful day. This is a powerful day. And that power, we know, of course, is felt differently by different people, isn't it? It is. And that really shouldn't surprise us. It should not surprise us that some of us really get what the empty tomb means, and some people don't get it. That shouldn't surprise us. I mean, all of life is like that, right? We get kind of wrapped up in our routines and our schedules and frustrations and anxieties. We get wrapped up in different things, and sometimes we miss the point. We miss the point of life sometimes, and certainly sometimes we miss the point of Easter. But truth be told, this is a big day. What happened on this day was big. It was big. For Jesus to die on Good Friday, for him to die on the cross was noble. It was heroic of him to do that. But to rise from the dead, to defeat death, is huge. That's huge, because you know why? Because only God can defeat death. I can't do it. Can you do it? I can't defeat death. Only God can do that. And so then you think, why? Why did God do that? And the answer has to be for us. It has to be. That makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, why would God defeat death for his own sake? He doesn't need to do that. It had to be for us. God came into this world in a person, in Jesus, to rescue us. Jesus died on that cross to save us, and he rose from the dead to free us. All of this is for us. This is for us. And yet sometimes we still get more wrapped up in the turkey and the ham and the candy, you know? But I think I know why. I think I've got a theory on why sometimes we get sidetracked on Easter and we get wrapped up in kind of the food and stuff like that rather than the real meaning of it. You want to know what I think? I think sometimes people think that this Easter story doesn't really apply to them. That's what I think. Jesus rose from the dead to defeat death. We get that. But he did that for good people, right? Good people. People like Rob. I'm just kidding. But we do have that little voice inside of us, don't we? Don't we have that little voice inside of us that kind of tries to convince us of our own unworthiness of something this big? A celebration this big, that we're not really worthy of that? I mean, the gates of hell have been broken down. But that wasn't because of me. I'm not that important. You know? I remember when I was growing up, I used to see those pictures of Uncle Sam pointing, right, and saying, I want you for the U.S. Army. I want you. Do you remember those? I want you. And I'm not kidding you. I used to look at that and say, he's not pointing at me. He is not pointing at me. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not brave enough. He must be pointing at someone else. I knew I didn't measure up, and I knew I didn't measure up. Or at least I felt that. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you ever feel that sense where you don't measure up? And that's what I'm talking about today. You know, Easter is the celebration of life over death and victory over defeat and joy over despair. But listen, knowing you the way you know you, and you know you better than anyone else, right? You know what's lurking in there. Knowing you the way you know you, it is not uncommon for any of us to think that the focal point of this celebration today has got to be someone else. It's got to be for someone else. Jesus rose from the dead to conquer death on this day. That is such a relief for the good people. I want to tell you something today that maybe you have never let sink into your spirit before. It was for you. It was for you. What happened on this day was for you. Easter is for you. You who may be here for the first time today ever, maybe never even been in church before, it was for you. You who have been here every Sunday for 50 years, it was for you. You who are here religiously 2 times every year, what happened on this day was 100% absolutely for you. And I know it was. I know it was. You want to know how I know? Do you want to know how I know that it was for you? Because there's 2 truths that I want to share with you today. 2 truths. This is how I know that what happened today is for you. Truth number 1, God made you. He made you. And that part, I think it kind of seems kind of obvious, doesn't it? That God made you. I mean, you wouldn't be here otherwise. People don't just spontaneously pop into existence. You are here because God created you. He formed you. He designed you, just in the same way that he designed this world. God has put you together and created you and formed you the way he wants you to be. You are made by God. That's the first truth. God made you. And the second truth is that God has never stopped loving you, never stopped thinking about you, never stopped desiring to be connected to you. And that's the truth right there that I'm guessing some people might struggle with. You know, we might wrestle with that, and that's not uncommon. I mean, we tend to internalize, right, the things that we've done before, the things that we've thought, the things that we've said, and the opportunities that have passed us by, that maybe we think all those things together have disqualified us from being in God's thoughts, being in God's heart. You know, I think about Uncle Sam pointing and saying, I want you, and I think, it's not me. It's not me. I'm not big enough, strong enough, brave enough. And we hear that God loves you, that God's been thinking about you, and it's not uncommon to think Yeah, but that's not me. Not me. I'm not good enough. I'm not pure enough. I'm not righteous enough. I've blown it by now, and he's moved on to someone else, someone who is a better person, right? Someone like Rob. Cindy's smirking. It's not me. But we do think that sometimes, don't we? Don't we? Certainly, I've blown it by now. I have not given God my all. I have not, and I know I have not. Why would God open a door like this on Easter for me? I might as well enjoy the turkey and ham and the candy. Might as well enjoy it because it's probably the closest thing to paradise that I'm going to get. Did you know that a long, long time ago, God's people in the Old Testament felt the exact same way? Do you know that? They had abandoned God's plan for them. They had put their trust in other false gods. They had turned away from what God wanted for them. And by the time they came back and they came to their senses, they were pretty stinking convinced that God had moved on to someone else. That he had put his plans onto another group of people, and that he had turned his back on them. They were pretty sure that God had rejected them. Bless you. And do you know what the response to that was? Do you know what the response was? This is pretty cool. It's in Isaiah chapter 49. This is what it says. Sing for joy, O heavens. Rejoice, O earth. Burst into song, O mountains. For the Lord has comforted his people, and he will have compassion on them in their suffering. And yet Jerusalem says, the Lord has deserted us. The Lord has forgotten us. Never. Can a mother forget her nursing child? Can she feel no love for the child she has borne? But even if that were possible, I would not forget you. See, I have written your name on the palms of my hands. Always in my mind is a picture of Jerusalem's walls in ruins. Isn't that a beautiful passage? Isn't that beautiful? The people thought that God had rejected them, had forgotten about them, had moved on to someone else. And God says to them, no. Look, I have your name written on my hands. Your troubles are always before me. I could never forsake you. Wow. There is no doubt at all that what happened on this day is for you. It is for you. God has never lost sight of you, even though we may have lost sight of him. Do you know that in the midst of our rebellion and our apathy and our anger and our selfishness, do you know what God was doing in those times when we weren't even thinking about God? Do you know what he was doing? He was writing your name on his hand so he could keep you as close to him as possible. Don't you dare look at the person next to you and say, well, maybe that person, but not me. That's not me. God hasn't done that for me. I've done too many things. No, it is you. It's you. God has written your name on the palm of his hands. There's one translation of the Bible that says God has etched your name on his hands. Isn't that crazy to think about that? That God has carved your name, that he's etched his name, that he has tattooed your name on his hands. Isn't that crazy? This is how I know, you guys, that Easter is for you. That what happened on this day is for you. Those two truths. God made you, and he has never, ever stopped loving you. And I totally get that sometimes this may not make sense to us. That just doesn't kind of click with us. I get that. But you know what? Just because we don't understand something doesn't mean we can't benefit from it. Right? Isn't that true? I don't understand the ins and outs of how my car works, yet I drive it every day. I don't understand how my cell phone works. I don't understand how my laptop works, but I still benefit from them. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, should I refuse to use my car or my cell phone because I don't understand how they work? Should I refuse to use it until I understand it? Silly. The only way I don't benefit from those things is if I don't use them, right? You know what? I'm speaking for me personally. I do not understand the depth of God's love for me. I don't understand it. But the only way it doesn't benefit me is if I refuse to let it in. Even if I don't understand it, it benefits me unless I refuse to let it in. But you want to know something crazy, you guys? Even if I refuse to let it in, God still has my name written on his hand. Even when I push him away, he's yearning for me. Even when I reject him, he looks at my name every day on his hand, and he loves me. Isn't that crazy? Easter is all about new beginnings. It's all about new beginnings. Life out of death and light out of darkness and joy out of despair. My guess would be that there's probably a good handful of us here that carry around our share of death and darkness and despair inside of us. And sometimes we don't know what we're supposed to do with it. You know, we battle with insecurities, and we battle with doubt and fear, and we battle with apathy and guilt and regret and shame. We battle with these, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, you know. On Easter today, the invitation is to begin to let that go. You know, Jesus overcame death for you. I think he can handle the unhealthy stuff in your life. So the invitation is to let it go. And if you need help with that, here's what you do. This is so easy. Here's what you do. Take your hand. You guys all have a hand? I'm not seeing any hands. Take your hand, okay? Look at it. And imagine that this is God's hand. This is God's hand. And your name is written on his hand. Your name is written right across the palm of his hand. And now your invitation is to take your guilt and your shame and your anxiety and regret, anger, and put it in his hand. Just put it in his hand. And he will take it and hold it. And you don't have to worry about overburdening God, right? You don't have to. He's already got you in his hand. He's already got your name on his hand. You're not telling him anything he doesn't already know. He's waiting for you to give it to him. And he will take it away. And as you do that, I want you to be aware over the next few days or over the next week of the feeling of peace and joy and light and hope that start to flow into your life when we push that unhealthy stuff out of the way. Some of us may not be ready for this. And that's okay. That's all right. I mean, you are welcome to carry this stuff with you as long as you need to. But as you do that, I hope you don't forget the vision of God reaching out his hand to you. A hand that has your name written on it. Because you are the one that he's been thinking of. You are the one that he's been loving. You are the one that Easter is for. I'm going to invite you to pray with me this morning as our ushers come up.